So, hello everyone. My name is Linda G. Robert. I'm your Back in the Groove Again coach, and I'm here to help you live your best life now so you can love what you do. And one of my goals this year is to connect with interesting friends. And one of those is Tashai, very, very interesting person. Here's a little bit more about Tashai. So, Tashai Lovington is a #1 bestseller who's changing lives in the field of self development. But Tashai's magic doesn't stop with her writing. Her storytelling prowess comes alive through her YouTube channel, Tashai Travels, where she shares her adventures from serene natural wonders to the vibrant pulse of city life. Tashai shows us how travel can open our hearts and expand our minds. And I want to know more about that in a few minutes, fostering deep personal growth. At her core, she believes in a powerful truth, the journey of discovering ourselves and the vast, beautiful world around us that can be transformative. She's dedicated her life to this belief, encouraging you to embark on your own travels, your own adventures of self exploration and creative expression. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know where to begin because I looked at your channel and I'm going, oh my God. So, where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? There's so many places to begin.
There is. I mean, that's definitely a huge topic, and we can start wherever you want. I do actually have, well, I was talking with some ladies yesterday about solo travel
Right, perfect.
and and just the feeling of people not wanting to do it because they feel like they'd be lonely.
Yes, that's a great place to start. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? Because I know last summer you went on a huge trip, right? Alone to
I
boot.
did. Yeah,
Right.
I
So,
went on a month-long trip, sleeping and camping in my car, and I went from the Midwest through to California to the coast and then back again. And it was solo. And I got a lot of people, especially women, saying you're so brave and I could never do that. And aren't you lonely? And honestly, I had about 10 minutes of loneliness the whole month. It was all because of mindset.
yeah,
You know, there were plenty of times where I could have been lonely, but if you
yeah,
have the right mindset and you're not looking at what you're missing, you're looking at what can I do? You know, I'm here now, live in the moment, and I'm free to do whatever I want.
yeah, that's
Then
huge.
then you're not lonely and you can talk to people too. I mean, I visited about 6 friends along the way and I met some new acquaintances that I just met happenstance, you know, talking to people in a restaurant or
Yeah,
at a, you know, activity or whatever. And so it's not lonely at all.
yeah.
It's all in your mind and how
I,
you look at it.
I hear you. And, one of the things that I hear with some of the people that I work with is because I do travel by myself most of the time is how can you do that?
Yeah.
Aren't you afraid? Right?
Yeah.
Aren't you afraid? It's not so much the loneliness piece that they're concerned about at that time, but it's the fear of even
Yeah.
doing it, right?
I got that too, for
Yeah.
sure.
So how
Especially
did you?
because I was sleeping in my car at
Yeah.
campgrounds and things. They were like, and a couple times I stayed at rest stops and they're like, how can you do that? Because I did build a bed in my car. Outfitted my car as a little RV. So I had a bed, you know, I had kitchens, I had bathroom facilities. And so they were definitely like, oh my God, how can you do that? Aren't you afraid?
Right.
And again, it's mindset. I mean,
Right.
obviously you want to be careful,
Yeah, and I'll
but
stop there just for a second because when I did look at your channel, one of the things that I love that I had no clue because you were setting up your tent and I believe you put men's boots or something like that outside of your tent or something like that, right?
somebody did suggest I do that. I actually have a chair that I put
Okay,
out and I have what I call a decoy tent because
right,
I
okay, decoy.
wasn't actually sleeping in the tent. I was
Okay,
sleeping in my car,
okay,
but I
that's
put
what it
up the
was.
tent anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I remember watching that video a while ago and I couldn't remember the details. But yeah, so why did you decide to do that, the decoy tent?
Well, the decoy tent was on purpose, somewhat for safety, but more so because if I'm sleeping and have everything in my car, if I have a campsite and then I want to go hiking, I take my car to go to maybe a trailhead, several miles away. My tent in everything, if I don't have a tent, my campsite is empty. So it
Right,
looks like I vacated the site.
right,
And so
yeah,
they may
yeah,
think, oh, she's not there. I'm going to cancel the reservation.
right,
So
yeah,
main
good point.
reason was to keep my site,
Yeah,
but it does also work for safety too.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when did you start doing these types of adventures? Were you always, as a kid, were you always taking off, running away?
Trying. I mean, I did travel some with my family as a kid, but I was raised by a single mother for most of my life, so she didn't have a lot of resources for that.
Yeah,
I did spend some time with my father on the weekends and we would go camping. And he did live in California for a year, and so that was super exciting. That was like the first time at that point I had ever left the Midwest. And so I was very enamored with California.
right, right. So
But
when
yeah,
did
I
you,
just,
yeah, so when
I
did you
just,
actually start like doing this on your own, more or less?
that was my first solo trip that long. I've done week-long trips solo. I've done 10-day trips solo, but I've never done a month before. So that was the first time that I had done that long.
Yeah, that's a long time too, especially camping, right? Like the camping piece
Yeah,
had to
and
be,
driving.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now, I just recently watched Wild, of course, just recently. So I need to find out a bit more because, when we go camping or we drive, we do come across some problems sometimes, just like in
yeah.
that movie. Did you come across any problems at all? Any concerns at all?
I didn't on that trip. I did stay in Sedona Oak Creek Canyon campground that had bear poles. So you want to put your food up there, although they said they hadn't seen bears in 10 years. So I didn't have any problems like that. Although they did tell me that the ravens will steal your food from inside your tent. They'll just break it right open.
I can't
So
imagine.
I know, right? But I didn't have any problems on that trip at all. Oh, actually, that's not true. I did have a problem with a California gas pump.
Okay.
I couldn't
Okay.
get it out of my car. It's the
Oh,
first time I had ever experienced, I guess they have vapor lock suction in California. I'm not familiar with it, but the first time I went over the California border, I went to a gas station, I put the gas pump in, I pumped the gas, and I could not get it out. And I asked these guys at the next pump to help me. In fact, I did a video on this, and they couldn't get it out either. So it's a good introduction. And then finally it just came out with the third guy or the second guy that had tried it. So it was the third person, just pulled it right
so
out. And we
so
were
was
like,
it
okay.
strength or just it just needed to have a little bit of air or something like what?
Yeah, there must be a trick to it because of the suction. I'm not sure. It was
Yeah.
just strange. So that was the only problem I had.
Yeah, well, that's a weird one. I walked the Del Norte last spring or fall, and I remember checking on some sites, and they were talking about some wild dogs or dogs that would be, coming to you barking and so on. And of course, that frightened me. So I think
Yeah.
if we expect the best, if we
Hmm.
don't expect wild dogs or problems, that
Right,
everything is going to go smoothly.
right.
Because it did freak me out when I read it, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it almost like changed the flavor of my trip even before it had started.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, what type of mindset do you have when you travel and by yourself? Because we're focusing on solo traveling right now. What kind of mindset do you have? Do you take on?
it's kind of just what you were saying. It's what you intend and what you expect
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
encounter. In fact, you just reminded me of another. See, I look at things as not necessarily problems. I just remembered another what somebody might consider a problem, where there was a rock slide over the highway one in California. And so I had
Okay.
to reroute,
Yes.
and it took actually a couple more hours to reroute. And I ended up I was going to a friend's house that night, and so I was quite late in the evening, which, could be a problem, but because of that, I was able to see new country. And I went
Right.
to a town that I had missed, that I had wanted to go through. So, it's what Jack Canfield says, E plus R equals O.
Yes.
Event plus response equals outcome. So it's
That's right.
how, even if something happens that it could be considered a problem, it's how you look at it, how you respond to it,
Yeah.
that then changes the outcome.
That's right. And when I went to Del Norte there, I arrived to a certain place and there was a fire. And some people were telling me, because I was walking to Del Norte, that I might have to change my route. Now, the
Mm.
next day, the day after the fire, I was on a rest day, and I thought, things happen for a reason. I really do. I do believe things happen for a reason. So I didn't have to really worry about it. And I decided I'm just going to take it a step at a time. I'm just going
Mhm.
to, and if I have to reroute, then I'll reroute. But if I don't, then
Yeah,
I won't. And I think that's the best mindset you can take on is changing your response, like you were saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So
And not
Mhm.
looking so far ahead and worrying about things that may not even affect you.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what prevents women from traveling more is they're thinking about everything that could possibly happen instead of just enjoying
Yeah.
the
Another
moment.
example that I can think of is I had one day of 10-hour drive, just 10 hours of driving. And if I would have looked at that ahead of time and said, oh my God, 10 hours of driving, I am not going to be able to do that. That's awful. You know, I'll go down the rabbit hole of bad things. And
Yes, yes,
that morning, I said to myself, I can do this if I want, or I can stop. And so let's just see how it goes. I put in a podcast, I have books on tape, music, and I ended up looking at the map and saying, do I want to stop? Like every couple hours, do I want to stop? No, I'll keep going. Do I want to stop? And I ended up doing the whole 10 hours, and it felt like nothing.
yeah,
I stopped a couple times, walked, give my body a break, that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like I ever had to just stop and, take a break for the whole night. And
yeah,
just taking it one step at a time made
yeah,
that drive easy,
yeah,
whereas it could have been a huge stress.
yeah. I think that's a lesson. Did you always know this to take it one step at a time, or is this something
No,
most of us don't know that from the
yeah,
beginning?
something I've learned through life experience and just learning from teachers and
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of bringing it up because there are a lot of women that want to travel by themselves and they're so afraid of doing it for
Yeah.
different reasons. Let's talk about that loneliness piece a little bit. Why do you think women, or probably women more than men, are concerned about this loneliness factor?
Yeah, I think maybe it's because of the way women are perceived and what we're supposed to value.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily ourselves and our resourcefulness. It's it's what we bring to others or what others bring to us. It's not like a man, it definitely is more conditioned to be self-reliant, be strong, solve problems, and women are more taught, just traditionally, not everybody,
yes, Yes.
to give of themselves to others and not to be necessarily strong in yourselves unless it revolves around family or the home, things like that. To
Right.
go off on what's traditionally would be considered maybe a man's thing, where you go off on a journey, the hero's journey. It's not the heroine's journey, it's the
Right.
hero's journey.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of counter to the old programming,
We
and
got to
especially
change that, right?
yeah, especially older women. I mean, younger women. There's a lot of women in their 20s who are just doing incredible things. But older women, we weren't taught that stuff, and there wasn't this support then too. I mean, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have, you know, quick connections if we got in trouble, things like
Yeah.
that.
That's,
But we do now,
yes.
and it's
Yes.
definitely doable for sure.
Yes. I'm just remembering when I worked at the Vanier Community Service Center when I lived in Ottawa. I was one of the older staff, of course, because I started there when I was 51, but a lot of the my colleagues were in their 20s. And I'm telling you, when I heard, one of my colleagues going to, I can't remember exactly the location, but on her own, I thought, oh my God, if when I was that age, I had kids and I'm thinking I would have never done that. Never even thought about doing those kind of things at that
Yeah,
age. But now you
yeah,
bring up a good point. Young women, young people in general just want to see the world because it's
yeah,
it's out there, isn't it?
yeah. And I think it's easier in some ways now because you can stay connected to your friends and family a lot more than you could before.
Yeah, absolutely. When I walked, and I mentioned that because it's the most recent experience. I had my phone with me, and I felt,
You have connection most of the way or all the
yeah.
way, or
Well, I did because I had purchased a SIM card for Spain. So I was all set. I was all set. So it wasn't an
great.
issue at all. So are you
Yeah,
thinking of your next adventure at all? Have you been thinking about it, or
I
what's up
am for
now?
sure. Well, I have a couple things in mind. Always brewing with travels. I think I'm going to go to Portland coming up in May, visit some friends and also to do some hiking and some exploration there.
Right.
And I'm also kind of brewing an electric tour of the US to film
Electric.
an
I don't understand. Oh,
electric vehicle tour,
okay.
because there is infrastructure for electric vehicles in the cities. Pretty in most big cities there is now, but I'm not sure there is for cross-country travel or camping travel and things like that. So I kind of want to test that out and
Test it out.
do some videos on it, maybe do some writing and
Oh,
things like that. I'm also
yeah.
planning to write a book on my travels from this past year.
Yes. Let's
Um,
speak a little bit more about your traveling because, in your bio, you mentioned, and I'm just going to read it because I'm looking at my second screen now. You mentioned that that's not all you do, but you didn't talk a lot about it, right? So let's talk a little bit more about your writing, please.
Okay,
You're,
sure.
you're you're talking about writing for your travels. Has that been something you did in the past as well, or was it completely different?
I've been writing for about 25 years. I was a copywriter for a catalog when they
Mm,
used to have print catalogs. I've written for magazines, had a couple columns in some magazines
mm.
again when there used to be mostly print
Right.
mail and them come in the mail type of things. So I have been traveling, or I have been writing for about 25 years. I wrote my first book almost 3 years ago now. And I have two more coming out hopefully in a month. So
Good
that'll be a
for
total
you.
of four.
Yeah.
And I have, because I'm always going with my mind, I have a list of about 10 more books up and coming. So who knows when I'll have time to do those. But, as I get time, I'll put one out and yeah.
Yeah. Writing a book is long. I'm in the process of finishing the editing of one of the books that I've written, and it's a lot of work, okay? It is.
Yeah.
So what do you do to motivate yourself to finish this thing, this baby, this project?
Well, I don't have a lot of trouble with that. A
Hmm.
lot of people ask me that, but I think it's probably because when I was younger, I worked other jobs. Even though I was a writer in some of my jobs, it was for other people. And so I had all these things kind of backing up the ideas. Like I said, I have like ten books right now. Well, I had even more on my list then. And so it's kind of like I'm getting older and when am I going to do this stuff? And so that's kind of my motivation when the time is now. If
Yes.
not now, when?
Yes, that's
Kind of
right.
thing. And
Yeah.
I do sometimes get stuck in certain parts of it. Like I may have the middle might be like, oh, I don't want to write this part right now. So then I'll go to the end. I don't feel
Oh,
like you have to write a book in order.
right. That's a
But if
good
you're stuck
point.
on a certain part, go to a different part
Right.
and start writing. And then I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of habit tracking. One of my books that I wrote is actually a habit tracker.
I
I don't know
can't
if
see it because of your background, but there you go. Oh, I love that looks of it. That's your
yeah.
book?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I track habits every day and I'll check them off, and which definitely helps motivation because if I don't fill it in, then I'll notice, and it's very visual. Let me show you an example. Here's one that I filled in already. So you can
Oh,
see
yes, so
where
creative.
where I've missed, I
Right
can
there.
see
Oh, it's
I can see where I've missed. And so then I'll be
beautiful.
like, oh crap, I'm not living up to what I want. And this is where I'm not doing as good a job. And so let's do better. And so I'm a big fan of habit tracking. It really helps for me.
Right.
And I
And
think it helps a lot of
yeah,
people.
your book, I guess it's available on Amazon. I'm assuming. I don't know. Where is it
Yes.
available?
All my books are available on Amazon and also through Barnes and Noble and other retailers. They can order them.
Yeah, perfect. Because I also want to refer people to your website. I was going to say your YouTube channel as well. So we'll need
Yes,
that, and I'll add the link to our
that'd be
to our
great.
video. So you're a world traveler, a U.S. traveler. You're a writer. You're an author. Is there anything else we would like to know?
I do help other people occasionally with them as a book coach or helping them
Hmm,
self-publish. I have done that for quite a few people. I'm not doing that as much anymore because I'm concentrating more on my things, but I do
right.
still take on several clients a year
Good
for
to
that.
know. Yeah, good to
Yeah.
know. What about in terms of traveling? Like, do you, because that's something that I'm moving towards. I'm wondering if that's something you're moving towards too, is helping women, kind of design their traveling or even get them ready to do it.
Well, I kind of am doing that with, or planning to do that with my YouTube channel some more.
Right.
Just as this is what I've done, and there's some tips for you as well, and also just inspiration. If I can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah.
So that's
And
that's kind of where I have that going.
yeah,
It's
I
still
think,
a
yeah,
young channel, but it's growing, and
yeah, and
I
I,
plan
yeah.
to keep continuing to put on there.
Yes, and I think that's great because when they see all the different videos that you put on, especially when I was looking at the one with the tent there, I thought that is inspirational. That tells women they can do it, and you're providing different tips by doing it, by actually showing them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that is definitely inspirational. Great. So I'm going to add your link to the video and to the YouTube channel, I should say. And if there's a link to your books too, please share that with me and I'll be able to add that as well.
Sure, I will.
All
Yeah.
right. Is there another way to get a hold of you? YouTube channel. We've got links to your books. Is there another way that if people wanted to contact you, they could?
I do have a website with an email on there. It's mostly for my book coaching and self-publishing for other people, but they can use that for anything, or you can just email me directly at tashai@tashai.net. Very easy.
Perfecto. Perfecto. And thanks again for meeting with us. And I hope that you have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful new adventure.
Yay, me too. And I'll let you know if I do,
Yes,
or when I
please.
do, I should say.
That's right.